Hello, I'm John Conrad, founder and CEO of G Captain, coming to you live from my home office. Me and my family are self quarantined in safety, surrounded by the love of my children who are homeschooling and my wife who's a teacher. Safe from the global pandemic. But while we are safe, we also at G Captain bit of insight into this pandemic. Our editor in chief, Mike Schuler, his hometown is New Rochelle, New York, the epicenter of the pandemic. I grew up in the town next door. We have friends and families in the mandatory quarantine zone. We have a lot more friends and family working at the front lines. I'll tell a quick story. When I was a kid, the early 80s, the Bronx was burning. They called it the war years. Every news report said that the Bronx was the most dangerous place in the United States and possibly the world. During that time, my dad was a firefighter with Rescue 3. He was averaging 3 major fires a day. The entire borough burned. If you asked him if he was a hero, he'd say absolutely not. He'd say, if you want to see a real hero, go talk to your mom. My mother was a nurse. She volunteered to work in the projects. Buildings, some considered so dangerous, the police officers refused to escort her, treating patients. The nurses, the doctors, paramedics at the front line, they don't get the medals that my dad got. They don't get to meet the mayor and shake hands. They get very little thanks for their services. So I wanted to start first by saying thank you. These people are working hard. They're at the front lines and they're facing a lot of challenges. One of the biggest challenges they're facing right now is something that every mariner knows well. It's simple fatigue. The kind of fatigue that makes it difficult to avoid those minor mistakes which could kill you. So I wanted to thank our medical professionals at the front line. Those aren't the only people I want to thank. If you look at New York City, how it operates, how it runs, critical to the success of the city and our ability to move past this pandemic is a core of maritime professionals. I went to SUNY Maritime in the Bronx. We have marine engineers working at every hospital in the New York City area because hospitals, like ships, have to be redundant. They have to have emergency backup systems. Many of the big buildings in New York City operate on steam. So we have marine engineers at the front lines keeping those ventilators running. In addition to that, you have electricity feeding these ventilators. And all the major power plants in the New York City area, again, are marine engineers keeping the lights on. If you talk to a journalist, they say, if you want to get into any emergency zone, all you have to do is put on a bright orange vest and a hard hat and you become invisible. It's these invisible workers that are so critical to our success. And the list is long. You have countless naval officers. You have military Sea Lift Command. You have officers from my school and others lighting up the boilers right now to the hospital ships USNS Comfort and Mercy. Comfort going to be deployed to New York City. You You have countless mariners working on the New York City and the Staten Island ferries, bringing emergency workers to work every day. You have mariners on the garbage scows that are being loaded with waste and garbage, some of it infected with corona. Without these mariners operating these, the virus would spread because sanitation is critical. You have tugboats bringing in supplies. I go to the supermarket in my town and people are complaining about what's in the shelves. They're worried about how much is available to buy at the supermarket. As a maritime professional, that is not my worry. My worry is how are the warehouses doing on supplies? Indication is they're running low. We have to thank our longshoremen and all the maritime professionals working in our ports through this virus, maintaining that critical supply and logistics chain. We're running out of masks and PPE at hospitals. That's going to come from our ports. You have tugboats and barges bringing in the fuel to keep the lights on. And you have many mariners on standby, at anchor, frustrated, wishing they could help. But just being on standby, ready to move that materials is what the nation needs. And countless mariners out on ships away from their families, worried about their families, as their ships are loaded with containers that contain masks, gasoline, and heavy fuel oil that's powering the generators that are giving electricity to the hospitals, and other critical supplies. But it's not just New York City. Friends in Italy. I lived for a year in South Korea at the shipyards. This is a global concern and a global crisis. And I ask that we use this opportunity to come closer together as nations. I have that inside view into New York City. The escalating number of cases. But we are one maritime community. And as I look at Google Analytics, the majority of our readers are not quarantining at home. They're on the front lines. Again, if you ask my dad, who's the hero? He'd say, there are no heroes, but there are brothers and sisters in service. To find those guys, all you have to look at is as everyone else is running away from this virus or any disaster, who are the people still getting on the ferries, getting on the trains, getting in their cars, and going towards the disaster zones, going to work every day, or standing by at work as their families are home? And we thank those family members too who are supporting our mariners and our emergency workers. The maritime industry is vital to getting us past this pandemic. And the maritime industry has supplied so many manufacturing, transportation, electricity, power, and even the hospitals themselves, the labor, the knowledge from the maritime world. So I want to thank all of you who are out there heading towards, who can self-quarantine, who are fighting this disaster. This is John Conrad with G Captain, signing out. Stay safe.